What's up, LEGO builders? Welcome back to Coconut Brick Studios. When it comes to the Clone Wars, there's so much to enjoy. From massive battles in crazy locations, to vehicles that have inspired countless mocks. Even a clone no-scoping an incoming RPG. But with all the good the Clone Wars gave us, there is tragedy as well. And not just the animated style minifigs. There's some very sad deaths, especially among the clone ranks. So today I am paying my respects to those fallen heroes and building 3 of the saddest deaths in the Clone Wars, which I'm sure is going to spark some serious controversy in the comments. So if you're ready to take a trip down Clone Wars memory lane, don't forget to execute Order 66 on that like button, and let's get building. First up is none other than Commander Thorn's epic landing pad last stand on the planet of Scipio. Going up against a horde of battle droids with his men, he was able to warn Padme to flee the place and was only able to be gunned down after being completely surrounded. Now, for how sad and epic the death was, the setting is about as exciting as the sand dunes of Jakku, just a large flat slab of gray. Now, I could just slap down a base plate, throw in some droids and call it good, but this is Coconut Brick Studios. You know I'm going to spice things up and of course sneak some dark tan in where it doesn't belong. I want to capture the essence of the scene, so I'm building a majorly scaled down landing pad made out of slopes. I want to make it more interesting, so I stuck 2 pop-outs on either side of the main build, creating a tapered look and giving the whole thing more substance. But I don't want to make that middle part too long and create the forbidden shape, or the comments on this video would get real out of hand. I feel like Thorn's death is a good example of one of the core narrative structures of the Clone Wars, in which random named characters suddenly appear in one episode to create tension and some heroic last stand or sacrifice for the greater cause. I built a small rock wall just high enough to raise the landing pad up off the ground. I could have gone with dark bluish gray, but where's the fun in that? Plus, this looks more colorful. I finally have another reason to use this custom Thorn I decaled a while ago, and I added a couple of extra details around him to better set the stage. I even snuck in a few crates and boxes to take up dead space. It's interesting to know that in the initial wave of droids, not a single B1 is present, only the much more dangerous B2s and commando battle droids. I guess when Dooku really needs something done, he doesn't send in the B1s. Chaos on Scipio. Separatist aircraft have swooped in, destroying Republic gunships and dropping off droids who begin to mow down the clones. They surge forward but have been repulsed by a lone figure wielding a massive minigun, cutting down droid after droid, even hitting them with his gun when they get too close. This mock turned out great. The sloped pop-outs on the platform really improved the build as well as the lights on top. Next up is a scene I've built a couple of times in the past, the last stand of Captain Keeley and his Jedi General on the planet of Ryloth. After the rest of the clones and their force were killed, the two continued to hold a narrow canyon pass against overwhelming Separatist numbers long enough for a large group of Twi'leks to get to safety and receive some much needed supplies from Republic ships, allowing them to live to fight another day. I really like building Ryloth. The dark tan and olive green color combo I use is one of my favorites to work with, and the landscapes usually always have rock features of some kind, which is an automatic win for me since building dark tan rockwork is how I fuel my body and soul. But this time I'm trying something new, adding patches of medium nougat, then covering the edges with wedge plates to create beds of clay cutting through the terrain and pooling in some spots. Medium nougat is such a cool color to work with, and even though it's similar to dark tan, I feel like the two are a perfect match. Just like the Jedi Council and ignoring the obvious. The rest of the terrain is just going to be dark tan plate and tile, and it's already looking good. This is another great example of more random named characters suddenly appearing. As far as I can remember, this is the only episode Captain Keeley shows up in his Jedi General. Well, there's no way he was going to stick around with a name that sounds like the writers picked it 5 minutes before closing time, which is Imagundai. I'm gonna die. Which is probably what George Lucas is thinking watching his beloved franchise go down the trash compactor chute. Although, General Gundai basically soloed an entire Separatist army right here, so nature props for that. Ryloth has small, wiry trees, and I use these mixel joints to create some twisted trunks, and the olive green foliage is just the cherry on top of this beige cake. I threw in some plants as well. I love these curled stem plants, but can never seem to find a good way to group them together. Now it's time for the minifigs, and here's where things get tricky. The droids are simple enough, but there's no Imagundai fig, so I had to get a little creative. And while I do have a Captain Keeley minifig, he's got problems as well. Good grief, he's naked! But what's a mock challenge without having to get a little creative, right? Desperate to escape the Separatists, the Twi'leks have fled through a narrow canyon pass. With the Seps right on their tail, Imagundai and Captain Keeley knew there was only one thing to do. Stopping at the entrance, they turned and held what seemed like an overwhelming force at bay, even as they were attacked from behind. Eventually, both fell, but them and their clones held long enough for the Twi'leks to make it to safety. Such a cool but sad mock. This not only showed Keeley's sacrifice, but Gundai and the other clones as well. As I mentioned before, that medium nougat looks so good and has got me feeling like a Jar Jar at a food market.
Ah, mori mori.
I saved the worst for last. I'm not just talking about how the mock turned out. During the Umbara arc of the Clone Wars, there was a betrayal so devastating and brutal it still haunts me to this day. And it's all because of this guy, Pong Krell. He directed an attack which secretly pitted the 212th and 501st against each other and ended in the death of Waxer. The reason this one is the saddest one to me is how wasteful it was. Keely and Thorn were both defending other people and fighting droids, but Waxer was killed by his own side, his very brothers, in a pointless fight, and had to live with that knowledge as he died, making this the saddest one in my opinion. Pong Krell, who was secretly on the side of the Seps, orders the 501st to attack a nearby enemy position, but to their horror, in the middle of the fight, they realize they have targeted their brothers of the 212, who Krell had warned would be attacked by enemy soldiers disguised as clones. Rex ran between both lines, causing a ceasefire, but damage had already been done. Waxer, a hardened veteran who we'd been watching since season 1, where he'd helped save a Twi'lek girl on Ryloth and later survived the second battle of Geonosis, had been hit. As he lay dying, Rex and other clones gathered to pay their respects, and after Rex learned what Krell had done, there was only one thing left to do: hunt down the traitor and bring him to justice. I know there were a lot of names that could have been added to this video, but I had to draw the line somewhere. I just couldn't include everyone, and I'm sure many people will be asking, what about 99? Well, he's here, and by the looks of it, he's doing just fine. But for how sad this video was, I have some good news. Megito has finally been taken apart, and I can start my next mock series, as well as do some droid base and clone turbo tank challenges, so stay tuned. Don't forget to let me know what you thought about these mocks down below in the comments, and I'll catch you next time, but until then, happy building.